So hi everybody, thank you for being here. I'm super grateful to be able to present at the World Forum for Acoustic Ecology. I'm grateful for ACA, especially Eric and Deidre for all their emails. Thank you for the volunteers making this happen and for everybody that I'm sharing a space with today. So today I'm going to be talking about a long-term listening project called Listening to Victory Square. It's essentially a project where I lived in front of a city square, moving from Montreal to Vancouver across the country for 3 years, and I listened to it unfold. And I'd like to present some of my methodologies that I worked with to work with vulnerable locations, such as Victory Square. And I'll explain a little bit what I mean by a vulnerable location as well. So I'll start with my initial encounter of the square, my impressions, and then I'll get right into sensory methodologies and the artwork that I created. So all the artwork you see is the stuff that I made. Okay, cool. So, so definitely it starts with an encounter. I think the encounter is like the most important part of the story because it's a first impression. When I was rolling my suitcase down Hastings, I happened upon Victory Square, which is where I was going to be living in front of. And the first thing that I noticed is that there were signs of vulnerabilities in the square. There were people experiencing homelessness in the square. There was loud music. There was so much activity. There were birds. There was just this whole ecosystem taking place. And for me, I felt feelings of uncertainty. I felt unsure. I felt really like over bombarded with information. And so this is where I would be living for the next 3 years. It's important. My impression is important because I decided to continue unpacking it to explore what else is possible across this, initial impression of something. And I'd like to just present some of my research into what makes Victory Square vulnerable for those of you who don't know much about the location. So there's a history of poverty, mass protests, gentrification, strife. It's a fragmented territory, and it's inserted between the larger zones of the central city. In 2020, the homelessness count was 3,634 in Metro Vancouver, and in the city downtown, it was 2,000 people. And so Victory Square is this place located between the east and west end. And there's an open negative public opinion about the square. There was an MA thesis that was written at UBC, and they called the homeless people in the square powerless outcasts of wider affluent society, tramps, etc. And the view is basically that the square would be beautiful if there were no people experiencing homelessness in it. So it's important for me to start there because that's the reality. But I'm going to now take you through how I unpacked that. I mean, this research took time to build, but I'm going to take you from the beginning where I started to record the soundscapes of Victory Square and come to know it through my sense of hearing. One second. So at Simon Fraser University, I was lucky enough to take a course called Sensory Autoethnography, where we explored different texts, sensory ethnography, autoethnography. And we were invited to keep a multimodal journal of Victory, of a location or an experience. And so I decided to unpack my experiences with Victory Square in this journal format that I had done before in my previous practice in different locations, but I decided to stick with one place for this time. And so in this case, I was starting to use my body as an agent of experience and knowledge that I was including as part of the process of ethnographic inquiry. So I'll just show you an example of one of my journals that I have here. I do a painting, I would write. So a man drums a stick against the edge of a hard plastic sheet. He is standing at the edge of the cement circle, and he is illuminated under a row of helmet lamps. It is midnight. The sound reverberates against the looming infrastructure and seeps into dimly lit apartments. Laughter from another story beyond the edge bubbles over and disappears. Devoid of low vegetation, flat, open, Victory Square is like a symbol waiting to be activated. I run to grab my recorder, tripping over wires strewn in my apartment, and I perch it on the edge of the open window. So I made 18 of these, and throughout the process, I would investigate my feelings and thoughts in response to it. And over the course of basically this course, I started to build this big library of experiences in just listening to the square. And I also, through watching it from my window, I learned to also place myself in my own context, which I felt was really important in working with a vulnerable location, is that I too was present. And so what you're seeing here is a collection of all different things that I noticed in the square, from with drops of Jupiter, karaoke, to like somebody with a sniper, actors rehearsing their lines, no more war. And I placed myself at the center in the cenotaph because that's basically what I was overlooking this whole time. And so you can see me sleeping, you can see me cooking, you can see me working, sitting, having a crisis. You can see me, looking over, someone waving to me, and me showering. And it's almost like by virtue of being in constant contact with this fragile location with clearly tons of things going on, that I myself started to feel that I had to respond to that vulnerability and to also begin to place myself in my work in a more meaningful way. And so it was the beginning for me to start doing that. Yeah. And I think it just starts with being present in your own work. So the next thing that I'd like to show you is a 4-channel composition that I made. It's called Conversations with You, and it's a call and response sonic tapestry between 4 speakers, and I presented it in 2019 using field recordings and compositions. Of the square and actually work with these signs of fragility, vulnerability, broken glass, bell, classic sheet drummer, fireworks, and to sort of use that as the building blocks rather than hiding them. Hello. Rather than hiding them behind something. Lost my train of thought. Okay. Yeah, not hiding. An important part of working with vulnerable locations. And also placing the listener, the audience in my position as well, in my bedroom. That's how I was experiencing it. Yeah, so the next artwork that I want to show you, it's an online sound map I made of Victory Square. And I collected all these different experiences and I created a interactive map that people could click through. Hold on. This is the journal. 1 second. It's loading. It's just doing its thing. So I coded this in JavaScript. Like I learned how to code JavaScript just to be able to do this. And I chose a select few observations and I created these little stories about them. And my goal was to just show my positionality, my context, and also to include how humanity unfolds in these small interactions with people. So this is slots. So I'm sitting at my desk and I've rearranged the apartment so I have more space to move. It's impressive considering the apartment is less than 300 square feet and that most of the furniture is bolted to the floor. When I visit my friend on the 3rd floor, his kitchen is on opposite sides. It's funny to think about it, but we all live in slots at the Charles Chang. When I first moved here, I would rarely see anyone in the windows of the building facing me. I thought a lamp in a window was a man. And now that I've gotten real good at observing, I notice real people in the windows watching the square. Memorial Day and pipeline protests are popular events for watchers, and fights too. So this was my first time, I'm starting to like look out and see other people also watching this little ecosystem take place. And I think the last story that I'll choose from this, I mean, they're all kind of like fun in their own weird way, but I'll choose this one. It's like the simplest one, a plastic bag seat. So a man pays for parking while another sitting in Victory Square watches him while smoking a cigarette. He's wearing a cap that reminds me of my uncle. A woman comes next to him and he places his gloves down on the wet seat for her to sit. She moves them away. So he places a plastic bag instead. And she still doesn't sit. That's it. There doesn't have to be anything else other than that, you know, like that's it. So the last thing that I'm gonna show you is I made this extremely uneconomical zine. It's not even a zine. I mean, at this point, it's like a giant book. There's one copy and I have it in my hands. It's essentially the map. What I did, I would sit down and I would just journal whatever was taking place in the square. And instead of waiting for something really interesting to take place, I would just sit there and do it. And by doing that, I started to open up my visual sense as well and not just wait for something exciting to happen. And I noticed things like 80s music snapping and popping, a guy following another guy, a crow grooms itself, shake it, yeah, baby. And I have like a bunch of these in here. And I think this was really fun because I got to reveal my inner thoughts in connection to my observations, which I felt worked well with vulnerable location. So they're all here. I mean, you can look at them after if you want. They're just squares and writing. And I think something really important for this is that, I don't know if you know who Linda Barry is, Linda Barry, the comic artist. Like I worked with her making comics book to be able to just like not care. Like this is okay. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be this like immaculately drawn thing. It can just be what it is, which is, yeah. Okay, cool. And my conclusion. So my conclusion is, I hope that in sharing this trajectory of my work can spark more conversation about what it means to think and work with fragile locations. Some of my methodologies and self-reflexivity, revealing myself, site-specific research, and to not be afraid and to work in the beyond, or to work with, you know, messy locations, because I think that we shouldn't shy away from working with something just because it's messy. Actually, we should work with it because it's messy, because it reflects humanity. Finally, by learning to listen to Victory Square, I learned to listen for it, and I'll end with this. A city square is a living context, and so are journals. The context is a collection of experiences, ever accumulating and merging, forming life. Thanks.
Thank you so much for this presentation. I
Yeah.
really enjoyed it. And let's talk about non-extractivist approaches to research. Choosing explicitly to focus on the kind of sensation that's not really the mundane every day. And I was reminded of writing by Georges Perec, who made this very interesting suggestion that instead of focusing on extraordinary describe the world, we should focus on intraordinary.
Ah, that's cool. Okay, 1 second. Infraordinary? Okay, that's awesome.
And that was just critique of like looking for the sensational instead, trying to find that the most mundane or seeing mundane.
Yeah.
That's where the essence of life is.
Yeah. What's his name? Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot. Cool. Anyone else have any questions? Yeah.
To what extent did the ironic name of the square stimulate this?
You know, yeah, okay, to what extent did the ironic name of the square stimulate me to investigate it? I don't know if it was anything about the name or even the monument. It was just the whole experience of like walking there and being like suddenly immersed in this place that I would be living in front of. Like, I think that there was so many things going on, like so many political dynamics at play, like the pipeline protests, even like there was like a crew of actors dressed up in like from the 70s yelling "No more war." And it was just like, it was so weird. I think that I'd like to think about it more, but yeah, there's definitely like a weird. I don't know. I'd have to speak more with them. I don't know what their position, like every person is individual. They might have a different opinion about it, but I think, yeah, yeah. And a lot of people that are experiencing homelessness had, come back from the war with no jobs. Like that's like part of the history of Vancouver is like incredible loss of jobs throughout the 30s. So yeah. Yeah. Uh, oh. Hi, Milena. Nice to see you. uh, um, my reflections on audio recording. I think that I would have a problem if I was going in the square and conducting field recordings, and I had tried to do that and I felt very uncomfortable. However, doing it from my apartment window felt like it was in my apartment, like I was living there as well. So it felt like I had a sort of I had an ownership to my space. And so I think that that's how I navigated that. I'm not sure if that's your specific question, but if I would take this further and do audio recordings in the actual location, like down in there, I'd have to really think about that. Yeah. Oh. Oh. Yeah, just you can come see me after. Yeah.